And this weekend, protesters damaged properties, but who is going to pay for that damage? Insurance expert Matt Carlucci tells us most insurance policies will include riot or civil commotion coverage. The city councilman also talked about doing more in the underserved communities. He spoke with On Your Side's Ken Amaro.
This weekend, many of us watched the protests, most of it peaceful. While Jacksonville was spared the damage we've seen in other cities, there was still damage. It began Saturday after peaceful protests devolved into vandalism. Protesters damaged the supervisor of elections office, the Jesse Paul DuPont Center, and other properties. At-large City Councilman Matt Carlucci embraced peaceful protests, but not the vandalism.
That's breaking the law. They're taking advantage of their First Amendment rights to create havoc on others, and that's wrong.
Like many of us, the councilman has seen the George Floyd video.
I watched that over and over, and it sickened me.
He understands the genesis of the protests.
When that happens anywhere, it has terrible repercussions everywhere.
Part of that repercussion is property damage. His business is insurance. Carlucci says property owners should check with their agent for riot and civil commotion coverage.
If they had contents, computers that were damaged from people throwing rocks or the commotion or the looting and all that, that's covered as well.
With 3 years left in public service, he says he'll do more to improve services to the underserved communities.
We can't move together if some people feel like they're being left out.
Carlucci says another study of the social divide won't do it. It is time for action. Ken Amaro, First Coast News, On Your Side.